Good morning, afternoon or evening, and welcome back to Marginal Gains. Today's video covers the different village phase cavalry options that are available for each faction and has a look at how these can be used to maximise their effectiveness. So let's jump in. Village phase cavalry are overwhelmingly skirmishes, 10 out of 13 factions in case you were wondering. So based on that, you may actually not be aware of the other types available, particularly if you're just starting out and you're a Celtic faction player. However, Romans and Macedonians will start with lancers, and Ptolemies have the enviable camel archers that are well liked by rather a lot of players, but not necessarily well used. Although sword cavalry are available in the game, no faction has these in the village phase, so they're out of the scope of this video, but there may well be a follow-up video they will be in. But anyway, let's have a look at the three types that are available in phase 1. So before we look at the differences between individual cavalry types, let's first cover what they all have in common. Well, they all take 15 seconds to train one unit, and that's 50% higher than an infantry soldier and almost double that of a female citizen. They're also able to be trained from both the civic centre and from the barracks, well, except in the case of the Persians, because they have a specific fielding, the cavalry stables, for their mounted units. Finally, they're all going to cost you 100 food and 50 wood, but beyond these initial level similarities lie many differences that can make a big difference in how they're used, and how effectively each can support the kinds of strategies that you may want to employ. So let's first have a look at some of the uses of cavalry, as they're not just a military unit, and first up is hunting. If you've watched my Fast Food Marginal Gains episode, then you'll know that cavalry are very fast at gathering food, although you may not know that certain unit types are better at hunting certain animals, which is something we're going to cover shortly. But the first thing you need to know is that once an animal is dead, cavalry collect food 5 times faster than a woman collects berries and over 10 times faster than a farmer does. However, you will have noticed that I previously said once the animal is dead, and this is because hunting the animal itself can take a lot of time depending on the animal and the hunter. So let's quickly look at the different animals and who does best against each. Walruses and elephants are best hunted by range cavalry, especially elephants. This is because lancers will have to engage in hand-to-hand combat with an elephant, and possibly a walrus, and they will kill a lancer long before a lancer kills the animal. In terms of goats, sheep, pigs and muskox, these don't run when they're attacked or attack back. They just kind of stand there waiting to be slaughtered, so therefore they're pretty much the same for all types of cavalry. So if the map contains a lot of these, then don't worry about your cavalry type, it's pretty much irrelevant. The final group are deer, giraffes, camels and gazelles, and this is where lancers come into their own as superior to range cavalry. They don't need to aim to hit the animal, so obviously they're never going to miss. Also, because it's easier to know when they'll be killed, you could ensure that this happens closer to the drop site more often than you can with range cavalry. This reduces hunting time dramatically. So if you're on a map with lots of this type of animal, then lancer cavalry will really show their superiority over their rivals in terms of food collection. And that's that for food. So, what of the main thing that people want to get cavalry for? That being to kill your enemy's army and economy. And the first step towards killing your opponent and destroying their economy is scouting. Now obviously cavalry speed means that they can cover the map really quickly when compared to infantry, and if possession is 9/10 of the law, then knowledge of your opponent's situation is 9/10 of 0 AD. Therefore, it's imperative to have cavalry engaging in constant espionage against your opponent. So, if you find out that they're producing only women in order to boom, then you know to hit them early and hard. If they're producing soldiers in defensive positions in order to turtle, then you can boom and you can attack with siege later on, and so on. So knowing what your opponent is doing is absolutely essential, especially at higher levels of the game, and not just what they're doing, but also what their territory looks like. Do they have berries on the edge of the map, for instance? Chances are they're going to want to take them early on, so you'll know that this is a weak spot that you may be able to pick up some easy kills. Also, what do their wood lines look like? Can you deny any groups of trees? If you deny one spot, where's the next best one? These are all the kinds of questions that allow you to second guess your opponent, deny them basic resources, and for which cavalry offer an essential role. So basically your cavalry are pretty damn important during the village phase. So having established what you use them for, and which hunts which animals best, what are their stats like, and what does this mean for the final element, combat? Skirmishers, as the most ubiquitous unit, are up first. They offer a mobile attack and defense force and are pretty decent at hunting all animals. They have 100 health but very limited armor, and as they have to get quite close to an enemy to attack, if you happen to mistakenly attack spearmen or pikemen, then be prepared to run and shoot to avoid a bloodbath that's really not in your favour. Lancer cavalry have more health and higher armour than skirmishers and are also slightly quicker, but that doesn't seem to play out in the game as I frequently find myself being outrun by camels. But there you go. So if you want the best out of these guys, then you'll need to use them to duck in and out of fighting. Charge in and immediately pull them out, as their slow attack speed will mean that in all likelihood you're going to lose a prolonged melee, especially against spearmen or pikemen who will eradicate these without mercy. On the flip side though, a small group of these can tear through female farmers and woodcutters in no time at all, so be looking for berry gatherers, unprotected woodlines, and even tearing through farms. These are all the places where they do their best work. Camel archers are considered the best cavalry units by most players, but in some ways they're less effective than skirmishers. Firstly, their hunting is far slower due to their poorer pierce attack, and their longer range making them more likely to miss. As we've established, this means that maps with goats and sheep are a godsend, as that will remove this aspect of their display. Additionally, while they have the same armour and speed stats as skirmishers, their pierce attack is only around 40% of the strength, but they do have slightly better repeat attack values. However, the increased range that they have means that they can be deadly against slow-moving infantry, particularly pikemen, as splitting your camels into two groups means that they can have a constant fire-retreat pattern that totally disrupts your enemy soldiers' attack. So basically, when they're well used, camel archers are deadly and almost impossible to stop. So the main defence against them is simply moving your wood gatherers to a new spot and hoping to collect sufficient resources to mass enough soldiers and cavalry of your own to fight them off. And if you have lancers, then you're in luck. These are the best troops for chasing them off before they can inflict maximum damage. And that's the types of Phase 1 cavalry. As a final note, it's worth bearing in mind that some of the units types mentioned above exist for different factions at Phase 2, and those units will be covered in the second part of this video series. But just to confirm, the Persians' chariot archers and the Seleucids' horse archers both have the same stats as the Ptolemy camel archers, and weirdly you can hunt with the chariots. Now that seems a little bit incongruous to me, but who am I to question? I didn't make the game. Anyway, depending on your playstyle, opponent and the contents of the map, each type of cavalry is going to have its strengths and weaknesses. I hope this video has given you an overview of the differences between cavalry types and the ways you can use them to your best advantage. So roll on the next part where we'll cover sword cavalry and the best uses for all cavalry once you hit Phase 2 and beyond. Então, boa sorte com os cavalos e adeus e obrigado. Ciao.